Jeff Scroggens from Jeff Scroggens and Colorado just finished the set here in Delaware Valley Bluegrass Festival, and as always, we've seen you before. You guys rip it apart. It's such a joy to see you. It's a joy to see it's the same band minus the bass player, Mark Schatz, sitting here with you. I know he's a friend of yours. Is he playing often with you?
Yeah, for a while he was sort of our regular guy, and unfortunately his wife Eileen Carson's having some health issues, so he's not on the road. He's taking a year off the road, and so he hasn't been playing as much with us. But when we're on the East Coast or in this general vicinity, he we get him to play. We just recorded a CD, and he played bass and he produced the CD. So yeah, we really love Mark, and he's an immensely talented and also just a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he's clearly a legend. He's done some legendary things over the years. Now, you guys travel a lot, and you're playing all the time. You're ripping it apart. You play the banjo like nobody's business. And tell us about the band. I know your son's part of it, and everyone else in the band has been with you for a while.
Yeah, so the band's called Jeff Scroggens in Colorado because when I started this band, I was living in Colorado, and we all were. And then shortly after we started, we got a new bass player and a new fiddle player because we started working so much. Our other people couldn't do it. But we spent the last few years just trying to build a following in the West, and then sort of expand to the East. About 4 years ago, we made some connections in Europe, and we've been doing a lot of European travel in the last 4 years. And for 2 years there, we traveled about 300 days a year, which is really too much, but it was cool. We got to do a lot of nice stuff, and it's at this point we've all spread out. Nobody lives in Colorado at this point, but the lineup is myself on banjo and my son Tristan, who's pretty amazing now. Is on mandolin, and he lives in Nashville. And our guitar player and singer, Greg Blake, is also a pretty incredible guy, and he lives in Kansas City. And Ellie Hawkinson, the fiddle player, we hired her about 4 years ago, met her out at Wintergrass, a great festival in the Seattle, Washington area. And she grew up playing music with her family band in Portland, Oregon. And when I met her, she was a really good young fiddler and a great harmony singer. But being on the road the last few years, she's had the opportunity to hang out with a lot of great people, and she's really gotten good. And she's nominated this year for the IBMA Momentum Award for vocals. And last year she was nominated for her fiddle playing. So she's just come along. It's just a really strong band of great players. It's really and great people, and it's a lot of fun to play with them. And yeah, having Mark is just the icing on the cake, and we don't always have Mark because for a while he had his commitment with Claire, and now he's not doing that so much. So we had him for a while pretty regularly until he's had to take this time off, and he still plays with us occasionally, and so it's just a joy to have him here today.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. There was dancing and the clawhammer banjo, and well, anyway, back with the band though. One of the things I wanted to say, well, a couple of things. First off, the audience here, there was a lot of wow. You guys opened up for the day at 12 noon, and people were piling in and that were not as familiar with you. And there was a lot of people walking around wow, they really like it, and the thing filled up. And also the band, everyone that you said in the band, they all seem so everyone could grab the mic and talk to the audience really well. Everyone's got a good hold on that.
Yeah, well, and that's an important part of this. I mean, I'm pretty shy by nature, and I don't really like talking on stage that much. But it's part of what you have to do. But I was really glad when Tristan decided to step up and become sort of the front man for the thing, and I'd hoped that he would do that, and I think he's done an excellent job of being our MC. And Ellie is, he and Ellie have a good banter on stage together.
They do, yeah, absolutely.
And then, Greg Blake was a pastor of a church for 33 years, so he's got the gift of gab for sure. He can talk forever, and and even Mark. Everybody is really personable and good with an audience,
and amazing at their instruments as well. Greg could sing, and he could talk. but he could flat pick
he could
really
guitar,
flat pick. Yeah,
he's a great rhythm guitar player and a great flat picker.
So how did it start off for you? Like you're running around. At what point, what stage of your life do you decide you're going to move forward and do this?
It's really funny. The short version of the story is I started playing the banjo when I was 20, and I didn't know anything about bluegrass, but I really got super focused on the banjo. I decided I wanted to win Winfield, the National Bluegrass Banjo Championship, and I focused on that until I did that. And then I started playing in bluegrass bands and learning about bluegrass over time. But then I got married, had 3 kids, and I quit playing music entirely. But about nearly 10 years ago now, I got divorced, and I decided I lost everything. I lost my house, I lost my family, I lost my job. I mean, I lost everything at once. I was laid off, and I didn't have anything, and I decided I didn't have anything. And I heard that song, Me and Bobby McGee, and the first line of the chorus is "Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose." And I'd heard that a million times, but when I heard it, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I thought, I don't have anything left to lose here. I'm just going to start a bluegrass band. And about that time, Tristan, who had been playing for a few years, and he'd always been good for a kid. By the time he was 14, he was just good. And so I thought, well, here I got a mandolin player. And then I met Greg Blake at a mutual friend's wedding, and he was doing the music there. And they were bluegrass people, so they had a jam at the reception for music. And 7 hours later, Greg and I were the last 2 guys still playing. They threw us out at 3 a.m, and we just sat there and played 7 hours of bluegrass. And we said we got to start a band, and so that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you travel around, and one of the interesting things we talked before, you told me you spend a lot of time doing all the behind the scenes stuff as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm loosely looking to. Excuse me. Loosely looking to divest myself of some of that, but since it started, I do the road managing and the band managing. I do all the booking, and I do all the logistics and the travel. I kind of just do everything. Greg helps me do the booking, so we share that, and I just kind of do everything else. But I'm looking to sort of offload some of that because I'm working myself to death here, and we've put in 8 hard years of being one of the probably hardest working bands on the circuit, and time to slow down a little. I'm getting married next year, and Tristan's also tired. I mean, we're all a little tired of being on the road quite so much. We're gonna back off just a little bit,
Now you got something to lose, right? For freedom,
right?
Before you had nothing to lose.
All right, yeah. I mean, I got to and you do have to rethink. I mean, I don't want to be out on the road 300 days a year anymore. But I mean, my plan all along was to sort of put in that really big push, and then get to the point where we could kind of do what we've done, because we've all moved. I mean, I've been living, out in the Vancouver area, and everybody's moved to different places, and that's what I was hoping we could eventually do, was have a band where we had it all sort of up and running, and everybody could just have their lives going, and we could have it running well enough and be up far enough up in our success levels, I guess, to start to cherry pick better gigs. And that's kind of where we're headed from here. I think it's I want to spend more time at home. Tristan wants to spend more time at home, but we still want to keep doing it too,
Well,
so,
you pay your dues.
We're hoping we can transition into
I'm sure you will.
Bigger gigs, fewer gigs, and just keep this thing going. I think we can do that.
Well, on that level of conversation, let's talk about you put out an album a while ago, and tell us about when you made the album, and you have another album that's coming out now. So is that all together, or do you have another one besides that?
No, actually, the last CD that we released was called Ramblin' Feels Good, and that's been coming up on 3 years ago now. Time goes by fast, but we did that in Nashville with our friend and amazing engineer and producer Bill Vorndick. Recorded that at his place in Nashville, and he was the producer. And we were really happy with the CD, and it's gotten a lot of positive feedback, and we really enjoy the material on it. I mean, it's the basis for our show for the most part. But this last spring we went into the studio in Baltimore there, and or near Baltimore, and at Patuxent, and recorded a CD for Tom Minty, and Mark Schatz produced it, and we're really, really, excited about it. It seems like it's hard when you're involved in a project to be objective enough to like decide how good it is. I mean, that's a really hard thing to do, is to step back far enough back to have perspective. But to me, it seems like, I think it's leaps and bounds ahead of everything we've done so far, and I'm really, really happy with where it is. It's going to be released either later this year or very early next year, it looks like at this point. And we're really, really excited to get it out there. Mark did a great job of playing, but even a better job of producing. He's a really, really he's a talented guy. He's a very musical guy, and like I decided to hire him as a producer because I did a couple of projects where he was just playing bass on them, but he ended up having a lot of creative input because he's just a very creative fellow. And that gave me the idea that I thought he would be an excellent person to have produce the CD, and he was already playing with us pretty much all the time, and so I approached him about doing it, and he was happy to do it, and that's kind of
well, his resume speaks for itself.
Certainly, yeah.
He's played with all the biggest people in bluegrass and outside of bluegrass as well. Usually, I think it's common to say when you're talking about a band, oh, you got to see them to get the real feel for them. And I do feel that way strongly. However, your band, I think, even if someone doesn't see you and they want to get a flavor, even a YouTube video does give out all that energy. I mean, there's so much energy that you guys put in, yet you have mellow songs also in there. Like somehow it's like I feel the burst of energy, and some of the songs, they still burst of energy, but maybe because the whole set is burst of energy.
Well, I mean, that's when somebody says something like that, I really appreciate it, and it makes me feel really good, because that's kind of been my main, it's what I do. I mean, like when I started doing this, I always, I've just always played with a lot of emotion, I think, and when Tristan came along, he grew up listening to me and playing with me, and I mean, I think it just came naturally to him to have that sort of intensity level as well. And when I met Greg, I felt like he had that same. He's just like a really big energy, and I felt like with Ellie that she was not that. She wasn't fully there when we hired her, but I felt like she had the potential for it, because she's really like a great musician, and she's really stepped up and come along, and yeah, I think she delivers it too. And I feel like with, as far as what you're saying about the slow, or mellow stuff versus the high energy stuff or the fast stuff, it's like it takes more skill, in my opinion, to play slow stuff and make it interesting and hold people than even the fast stuff. The fast stuff's like, at least it's got that sort of like energy going, but it's like if you can figure out a way to put that into your more mellow thing, I think that's the greatest skill of all, is just figuring out how to. It's like when you're playing the sort of high energy stuff, it's like you're blasting it out at people, but when you start the mellow thing, then you gotta pull them to you, and that's a real skill,
Right.
But it still is that. I mean, I agree. It's like there's still that, you need that intensity and that energy level in even the mellow stuff. It's just a different form of it,
Well, it's one thing that I'm walking away with, I didn't know, and I find extremely interesting, is just the fact that here you are, like a phenomenal banjo player, any way you look at it, but you started at 20 years old. That in itself says a lot, because so often people think that starting, if you don't start at an early age, you'll never do it. Like, so when you started, did you play a different instrument before?
I did. So yeah, my really brief musical history is, I always loved music, and I wanted to play piano, but my parents really couldn't afford one, so we never had a piano. And I started off on a little keyboard and like messed around with that, but very informally. My grandfather was a great guitar player, and he was a well-known local musician, and he had like played with Ernest Tubb way back in Texas a million years ago, and he had a radio show, and he was a well-known local country musician. But when I was about 14, he gave me a guitar and a little book, and I started learning. And quickly, I decided to get a Les Paul and become. I started listening to Led Zeppelin, and because I was a teenager, and like much to his chagrin. But I spent the next several years playing heavy metal guitar, and I don't know. I mean, I was as the 70s were wearing out and the 80s were coming on. I felt like the rock music scene was just like it was not for me. It was like there were the punk bands coming out, and I was like I was interested in it, but it like wasn't my thing really. And the heavy metal things just got to where you had to like gouge a pentagram in your forehead just to fit in, and it was just a little too dark for me. Maybe I started looking for something different, and I was also sort of turning at that point into sort of a Mother Earth News, Back to the Land hippie. And so I just decided to like try making my own music with acoustic stuff, and I didn't know anything about it, and I bought a banjo at a garage sale for $60, and I took it to the music store, and the guy set it up, and he sold me the Earl Scruggs book and a few records, a Peter Wernick book, and some stuff, and I went home, and 6 months later I sold my Les Paul and my Marshall amp so I could buy a better banjo, and I don't even own an electric guitar at this point, and I just started practicing like, I mean, it sounds crazy, but I practiced for several years. I practiced about 10 hours a day. I had a job working for a guy that I was in a band with, Andy Owens, and his father was a doctor, and they had a medical practice of a diagnostic testing center, and I was their security guard. So for 14 hours a night, I just practiced the banjo for like 3.5 years. And it's like if you practice the banjo 12 hours a night for 3.5 years, you'll get better.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. Well, all right. So, how do people find the album, and how do they find you on social media?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a website. It's jeffscroggensincolorado.com, and we're on Facebook and Instagram and all the things that you would expect.
And Scroggens is with 2 G's.
That's it. And it's just jeffscroggensincolorado.com, and if you just Google my name, all that stuff will come up. And we're also like on all the I'm not even good with all that computer stuff, but we're on all those places where you get music. If you're young and know how to do that. And
you're playing a whole lot of festivals pretty regularly, so people should keep their eye open for you, because it's really a show that's fun to experience. It really.
Thanks, Scott.
If it was 12 o'clock noon that you started, and I know I was talking to some people who were joking around. We didn't have enough coffee, but now we're good.
That's funny. Yeah, well, it's always fun to come into this thing and be sort of unknown, and people like, it's good to be the nice surprise of the weekend.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the interview.
All right. Thanks so much, Scott.